August 16th, 1977. Graceland. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, dead at 42. The world mourned, millions cried, and the official story was clear: heart failure. Natural causes. A tragic but simple ending to an extraordinary life. But there was another story. One that nobody wanted to tell. One that involved thousands of pills, a doctor who played God, and a system that looked the other way while a legend slowly destroyed himself. For years, the truth stayed buried, protected, hidden behind celebrity, power, and fear. It took 3 decades. 3 decades before anyone was held accountable. Before the world learned what really happened in those final months. Before America understood that Elvis didn't just die. He was killed, slowly, methodically, by the very person trusted to keep him alive. Here's the story. Memphis, Tennessee. 1977. The golden age of rock and roll is fading into memory. Disco is rising, punk is exploding, and Elvis Presley, once the most electrifying performer on the planet, is fighting to stay relevant in a world that's moving on without him. But if you ask the public, Elvis is still the king. Still selling out arenas, still commanding attention wherever he goes. The white jumpsuits, the sold-out Vegas shows. The screaming fans who never stop believing. From the outside, it looks like triumph, like a man who conquered the world and never let go. The reality, it's darker than anyone imagines. Behind the gates of Graceland, Elvis is dying. Not quickly, not dramatically, but slowly, painfully, in a fog of prescription medication that's become as much a part of his daily routine as breathing. His body is bloated. His speech is slurred. His movements are slow and labored. The man who once moved like lightning on stage now struggles to get through a single performance without collapsing. And the pills. They're everywhere. Demerol, Dilaudid, Percodan, Quadanen, Quidisvalium, Dexedrine, Bifetamine, Amidol. The list goes on and on. Up ears to wake him. Downers to put him to sleep. Pain pills to numb the agony of a body that's breaking down. And at the center of it all, controlling the flow, managing the doses, writing the prescriptions with a steady hand and no questions asked, is one man, Dr. George Nichopoulos. Dr. Nick, they call him. Elvis's personal physician, his friend, his enabler. But here's what nobody knew in 1977. Nobody except the people inside that inner circle, the ones who watched it happen and said nothing. In the final 8 months of Elvis's life, from January to August of 1977, Dr. Nick prescribed Elvis Presley over 10,000 doses of pills, injections, and vials of medication. 10,000 in 8 months. That's not medicine. That's not treatment. That's something else entirely. And what happened next stayed hidden for decades. To understand how it got this bad, you need to go back to when Elvis was young, when the pain was manageable, when the pills were just a tool, not a crutch, not a death sentence. Elvis is drafted into the army, stationed in Germany. And it's there in the military that he's first introduced to amphetamines. Not for recreation, for performance. To stay awake during long night watches, to maintain alertness. It's standard practice. Soldiers have been using them for years, and for Elvis, it's a revelation. These little pills can keep you sharp, focused, energized when your body wants to quit. He brings that lesson home. Throughout the 60s, as his career explodes, as the movies pile up and the touring schedule becomes relentless, Elvis relies on medication to keep up. His doctor back then is a man named Dr. Max Shapiro, who has no problem writing prescriptions. Need to stay awake for a recording session? Here's some Dexedrine, can't sleep after a show. Here's some Seconal. It's controlled, it's managed. Or so everyone tells themselves. But then 1967 happens. Elvis meets Dr. George Nichopoulos. Dr. Nick is brought in to treat Elvis for saddle sores. That anyone suggesting he overprescribed medication simply doesn't understand the situation. And for years, people believe him. Because what's the alternative? Accepting that the king of rock and roll was killed by the very person trusted to keep him alive. That the pills everyone saw him taking, the medication everyone knew about, was actually a slow-motion execution. It's too painful, too ugly. So the official story stands: heart failure, natural causes, a tragic loss. But behind the scenes, there are people who know the truth. And they're not staying quiet. In 1980, 3 years after Elvis's death, the Tennessee Board of Medical Examiners begins an investigation into Dr. Nick. They review his prescribing records. They interview witnesses. They examine the evidence that's been hidden from the public. And what they find is staggering. From January 1977 to August 1977, Dr. George Nichopoulos prescribed Elvis Presley over 10,000 doses of medication, pills, injections, vials. In just 8 months, that's an average of over 40 doses per day, every single day, for 8 months straight. It's not just excessive. It's criminal. The investigation reveals that Dr. Nick used multiple pharmacies to avoid detection, that he wrote prescriptions under false names, that he lied to other doctors about the medications Elvis was taking, that he ignored repeated warnings from colleagues who saw the danger and begged him to stop. In 1981, Dr. Nick is charged with overprescribing medication to Elvis Presley and 9 other patients. The trial becomes national news. For the first time, the public learns the extent of Elvis's addiction, the depth of Dr. Nick's involvement, the system that allowed it to happen. But here's where the story takes another dark turn. Dr. Nick is acquitted. The jury finds him not guilty. Why? Because his lawyers argue that he was trying to help Elvis, that he was managing a difficult patient with complex medical needs, that without his prescriptions, Elvis would have turned to street drugs, which would have been even more dangerous. The jury buys it. Dr. Nick walks free. Was it justice, or was it Hollywood protecting one of its own? Let us know what you think in the comments. But the story doesn't end there, because even though Dr. Nick avoided criminal charges, the medical community isn't done with him. In 1995, 18 years after Elvis's death, the Tennessee Board of Medical Examiners finally takes action. They revoke Dr. Nick's medical license permanently. The official reason? Overprescribing medication, putting patients at risk, violating the fundamental oath of medicine. First, do no harm. By then, Dr. Nick is in his 60s. His career is over. His reputation is destroyed. And the truth about what happened to Elvis? It's finally, fully, undeniably public. Elvis Presley didn't have to die at 42. He didn't have to spend his final years trapped in a fog of medication, barely able to function, slowly destroying himself one pill at a time. He died because the people around him failed him, because the system that should have protected him looked the other way, because fame and money and image mattered more than his life. And Dr. Nick, he was part of that system. Maybe he believed he was helping. Maybe he convinced himself that he was doing the right thing. But the numbers don't lie. 10,000 doses in 8 months. That's not medicine. That's not care. That's complicity in a slow-motion tragedy that the world watched happen and did nothing to stop. Elvis's legacy is complicated. He's remembered as the king of rock and roll, as a cultural icon who changed music forever, as a performer whose energy and charisma could light up any room. But he's also remembered as a cautionary tale, a reminder of what happens when addiction is enabled instead of treated. When fame becomes a prison, when the people you trust most are the ones who hurt you. Dr. Nick lived until 2016. He spent his final years defending his actions, insisting he did nothing wrong, arguing that he was a scapegoat for a tragedy that had many causes. Maybe he believed that. Maybe he had to believe that to live with himself. But history has rendered its verdict, and it's not kind. So here's the question for you. If you could go back and change one moment in Elvis's story, stop one prescription, intervene at one crucial point, what would it be? And do you think it would have made a difference? Or was the system so broken, the pressure so intense, that Elvis was doomed from the start? Let us know in the comments which untold story should we cover next. Marilyn Monroe's final days, or the hidden truth about James Dean's fatal crash? James Dean's fatal crash. And unfortunately, they don't make men like Elvis Presley anymore.